Alright, today we're going to learn about World War II. We have 4 daily objectives. Number 1, list key tenets of fascism. Number 2, explain why Hitler demanded various land in Europe. Number 3, define the strategy of appeasement. And number 4, explain why Germany surrendered. So we talked about the ascension of Hitler. Basically, Hitler, he leverages several key moments. The first being the Great Depression. The second being the weakness of the Weimar Republic and the reparations payments. And the third, the anger of Germans because of the Treaty of Versailles. And after being appointed chancellor, takes over the government soon after and becomes dictator of Nazi Germany. So I want to hit fascism one more time, just be really explicit about it. Fascism has the following 5 key components. Number 1, it is extreme nationalism. So once again, remember, nationalism is a militant pride in one's nation. Nation being a group of people, not a country. Extreme nationalism, that's fascism. So you're so proud of the group of people you belong to that you hate everybody else. Number 2, military supremacy. They think the military is the end-all be-all of life. Number 3, limited speech. You do not have a freedom of speech in a fascist country. There's a big disdain for intellectuals. They don't really like college professors, and corporate empowerment. Generally, they side with big businesses, big factories, especially with Hitler, because this is his plan to get out of the Great Depression. So let's talk about appeasement. Germany had lost land in the Treaty of Versailles. We can see Germany here. The browner color, this one that I'm outlining, is Germany after World War I. Some of that land went to other countries. Some new countries were made. Germany wanted this land back. A lot of this land had been German for a really, really long time. And the other thing you got to realize is that Germans were living in this land. The Germans didn't leave. They were still living there. But now they were living in other countries like France or Poland or Hungary or Austria. So they wanted this land back. Piece by piece, this land is returned to Hitler under the policy known as appeasement. So, it starts in the Rhineland. So the Rhineland is part of Germany. Germany did not lose the Rhineland, but the Rhineland was demilitarized. What that means is Germany was not allowed to put any sort of military anything in the Rhineland because it borders France. They also lost Alsace-Lorraine, which is this province right here, to France. So France got Alsace-Lorraine, and they lost the Rhineland completely. They lose much of Poland, and then Austria, Bohemia, Moravia, and Slovakia. These are parts of Austro-Hungary. But the thing is Austria and Bohemia, part of Austro-Hungary, they're German. Bohemia is not actually German; they're Czech, but they had been under German control. Germans living in Austria for a really, really long time. So what the Allies do under the British and the French is they start allowing Hitler this land back. So first he goes into the Rhineland. He says, "I want the Rhineland back," and they say, "Okay, well it's his land. Like he can have it. That's fine." Then he goes into the Sudetenland, which is this hashed area right here. It was actually part of Czechoslovakia at this point, but it had been part of Germany for a long time. He goes into Sudetenland in September 1938, and the Allies are like, "Okay, well, I mean, it's his land. It's fine." Then he takes Austria. And the Allies are like, well, I mean, Austria wasn't actually part of Germany before during World War I, but Germans live in Austria. The Austrians actually want to join Germany, so they can have it. That's fine. Then he marches into Czechoslovakia, which is what you see with Bohemia, Moravia, and Slovakia. He marches to Czechoslovakia in March 1939. And the Allies are like, well, I mean, they're not actually German, and they weren't actually part of Germany, but they were under control by Germany for a long time. So that's probably fine. They can have that too. Neville Chamberlain, that's this guy over here. He's the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Famous quote, "The settlement of the Czechoslovakian problem, which has now been achieved, is, in my view, only the prelude to a larger settlement in which all Europe may find peace." My good friends, for the second time in our history, a British Prime Minister has returned from Germany bringing peace with honor. I believe it is peace for our time. This guy has no idea. He thinks he has stopped World War II before it can even start by just allowing Germans to have a bunch of land. But the thing is Hitler's not going to stop asking for more. If you're going to keep giving him more, he's going to keep taking more. And that's what happens with Danzig. So in 1938, Hitler demands the return of Danzig. Danzig is a city that's actually in Poland, but it had been part of Germany for a really, really long time, since like the 1500s. But he wants it back. Poland says no. Danzig is ours. You can't have it. Germany declares war in September 1939. The policy of appeasement proves to be a total failure. Poland is actually allied at this point with Great Britain and France. So Great Britain and France then turns around and declares war on Germany on September 3rd. We can see some German troops and some Nazi soldiers over here invading Poland. This starts the first phase of the war, at least in Europe, and that is the Blitzkrieg. As soon as World War II starts, Germany attacks quick. And the reason they attack quick is because of what we see over here. Tanks and trucks. Tanks and trucks. Tanks and trucks are a really good way to wage war because it's a lot faster than walking. And using tanks and trucks, the Germans create what is called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Basically, they can move their armies really, really, really fast through enemy lines. You can see how it works over here on the right. Step 1 is attack and Blitzkrieg. Step 2 is penetrate. So you penetrate the enemy line and then you encircle. And once you encircle, these guys get cut off from supplies, and boom, you win. Germany conquers Poland in less than a month using Blitzkrieg tactics. You can see the lines here going from Germany into Poland. In 6 more weeks, Germany has conquered France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. They take pretty much all of Western Europe. The only country left to oppose Hitler was England. So in approximately 2.5 months, Germany, using Blitzkrieg, using tanks and trucks, have totally conquered Western Europe. Now, the French and the British have tanks and trucks, but they're not nearly as good, and they're not using them the same way. The Germans are putting the tanks and trucks together so they don't slow each other down. They can just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. The French are actually putting tanks with infantry, which means the tanks have to go the same speed as infantry, so basically they're walking, and that was stupid. There's no point. But Germans, using Blitzkrieg, using tanks and trucks, are able to quickly overtake Western Europe. Next thing you know, the U.S. joins the war, and we're going to talk about the Pacific Theater on the next slide. But remember that Japan is allied to Germany and Italy. The USA knows that Japan wants to capture European colonies in Asia, including Guam and the Philippines, which are 2 U.S. colonies in Asia. It's territory that the U.S. owns. As a result, the U.S. kind of sees that Japan's trying to do some aggressive things over in the Pacific. The USA stops exporting oil to Japan and begins aiding Chinese resistance. Because remember, the Japanese have invaded China at this point. This makes Japan very angry. They need the oil to fuel their industry. On December 7th, 1941, Japan launches a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. Japan sinks 8 battleships and kills more than 2,300 Americans. Big flaw of the attack is that the U.S. aircraft carriers were not at Pearl Harbor during the sneak attack. They were actually out to sea doing some training, and this is ultimately what saves the U.S. in the Pacific, as the aircraft carriers. The same day, the U.S. declares war on Japan, and then Germany and Italy on December. Actually, I think it's December 12th. But shortly after, U.S. declares war on Germany and Italy, and they've officially joined England in the resistance. The U.S. joining the war is really what starts turning the tide of the war. American and British soldiers mass North Africa, which had been German colonies very temporarily, and start beating back the German army. In Russia, Germany loses over 200,000 soldiers at the Battle of Stalingrad alone. This is over here. It's literally one city. They're fighting over one city, and the Germans lose almost 250,000 troops. With North Africa captured and the Allies attack and capture the island of Sicily, part of Italy. You've got that pinned on your map. The Italian people kick Mussolini from power, and the Allies march on to the rest of Italy. In May 1944, the Allies launched D-Day, which is the invasion of France on the beaches of Normandy. Let's flip over to the Pacific. So that was the European theater. Let's talk about the Pacific theater. Pacific War actually started in 1937, 2 years before the European theater. The USA did not get involved until 1941 after Pearl Harbor. If you think about the Japanese invaded China in 1937, that's kind of like the first shots of World War II, even though most people generally don't consider World War II starting until 1939 when the Germans invaded Poland. The Pacific is filled with islands. We see all these islands. Most islands in the Pacific, including the U.S. territory, the Philippines, and Guam, are captured by the Japanese, which obviously makes the U.S. very angry, especially after Pearl Harbor. The U.S. engaged in what is called island hopping to free each conquered island. Basically, we're moving in with Marines and Army, and and we're just attacking and taking one island after the other. It's very, very painful. If you ever watched the show The Pacific, very good. Highly recommend it. You can see how brutal the island hopping campaign was, but it is successful. The U.S. does ultimately take back all of the islands in the Pacific from the Japanese. The worst battle of the Pacific, Okinawa, lasted 3 months. Realize that's longer than it took. One island. This is it right here. It took the U.S. 3 months to take Okinawa. It only took Hitler 2.5 months to take all of Western Europe. Pretty crazy. And it ends with 130,000 dead total. That's American and Japanese deaths. Most of those deaths are Japanese. The key thing with Okinawa, the reason why the U.S. was willing to pay that price, is that there's an airstrip on Okinawa, and that airstrip puts American bombers within range of Japan. So now Americans can do airstrikes on Japan between Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Now they can launch airstrikes on Japan. But all of these islands are crucial. They've got ports, they've got airstrips where the Americans can extend their supply chain and move the war effort forward. So ultimately, the war does end. Germany is getting attacked from two sides, from the west, from France, and in the east, from the USSR, Russia. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler commits suicide. He puts a Walther PPK to his forehead. On May 7th, 1945, Germany formally surrenders, so just shortly thereafter they had lost the war. Berlin is totally destroyed and has been taken by the Russians. Really, really, really ugly. In August 1945, the U.S. drops the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, two Japanese cities almost completely inhabited by civilians. Some 150,000 people are instantly killed, literally vaporized into dust. Japan surrenders on September 2nd, 1945, and the war is over. This is a picture of Hiroshima. You can see there's just nothing left. It was a city, and now it's nothing. Take a few minutes to answer your 4 daily objectives.